When you find
Ladies and jelly spoons, you beautiful retro-loving heathens, welcome to this month's 20th anniversary retrospective review, coming at you live via videotape from Britain's first and only airborne subterranean studio, the Orbital Broadcast Bunker. I'm Kai, your passionate host with more opinions than sense. Well, still not sure why we call it airborne when we're quite clearly underground, but you know, what do I know? I've had 3 pints already.
Gosh, I'm delighted to be here with me cup of Earl Grey, though I must confess I'm still not entirely sure what a PlayStation is.
Today we are celebrating 20 years of Grandia III, Game Art's ambitious but divisive third entry that landed exclusively on the PlayStation 2 back in 2005. Pat, you were covering esports when this dropped. What was the reaction?
Well, a bit like watching England in a penalty shootout. Started promising, ended in disappointment. Mind you, that's most things in life, isn't it?
Now, speaking of disappointment, Pat, did you know badgers live in complex underground homes called sets? Yeah, some of them have been in use for centuries, passed down through the generations. They really are remarkable creatures.
Right, moving on. Let's dive into this aerial adventure, shall we? Quick warning to the newcomers though, we will be discussing plot points throughout this video, so if you've somehow avoided playing Grandia 3 for the last 2 decades and want to experience it fresh, now's your chance to bail. Go on. We'll wait.
Are they gone? Good, because I can't imagine there are many folks desperate to experience this particular narrative masterpiece for the first time.
Yes, that's rather like my first cup of tea. It was anticipated for years, and then when it finally happened, it was... anyway, it was tea.
Grandia 3 emerged from Game Arts in August of 2005, with Square Enix handling publishing duties. Director Hidenobu Takahashi, who'd previously worked as art director on Grandia 2, wanted to push the series towards more adult sensibilities whilst keeping the trademark optimism.
Sorry, adult sensibilities must have missed that memo. Felt more like watching Saturday morning cartoons after every night down at Dog and Duck.
So picture this, March 2005 and the fine folk at Weekly Famitsu dropped the bombshell that Game Arts and Square Enix are cooking up another Grenadier adventure for the PlayStation 2. Because apparently after the lukewarm reception of Grenadier Extreme, someone thought, you know what, let's have another crack at this. Director Hidenobu Takahashi, who had previously been shuffling pixels about as the art director on Grenadier 2, steps up to the plate, promising adventure, drama and dreams with more adult sensibilities. Adult sensibilities? Yeah, because nothing says mature storytelling like a teenage lad obsessing over flying machines, does it? They wheeled in Yu Yoshinara for character design and Takehiro Hasebe for the script, both veterans of the original Grenadier game. So, at least they had some pedigree. Meanwhile, Mikitaka Kurosawa was busy crafting CGI cutscenes that would apparently equal 3 full films in length. 3 films! That's longer than the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and we all know how that turned out for people trying to stay awake. Takahashi reckoned that the battle system would be very complex but very easy to learn, which is classic developer speak for we're over-engineering something very simple. Still, credit where it's due, the combat was genuinely brilliant. Fast forward to December of 2005 and Square Enix finally announces they are bringing this aerial adventure to North America. February 14th, 2006. Yes, Valentine's Day. Nothing says romance like a JRPG about flying. And then, in a move that surprised absolutely no one who understands corporate priorities, Europe got completely ignored. Yeah, we had to wait until 2016 when it finally crawled onto the PlayStation Store as a PlayStation 2 classic. Only took them 11 years to remember we existed. The development team brought back veteran composer Noriyuki Iwata and character designer Yu Yoshinari. They were aiming for something epic. I mean, the amount of CG cutscenes reportedly equaled to 3 full-length movies.
3 moving pictures? My God, that's enough time to brew a proper pot of tea, at least 6 times. Now, did you know that tea bags were invented entirely by accident? Yeah, in the early 1900s, a New York tea merchant sent out samples in small silk pouches. Customers dunked the whole things in water, thinking that that was the intended method.
Oh, it's a bit like this game then, isn't it? You know, accidental innovation people just went along with.
The gameplay builds on Grandia's legendary battle system, arguably the series' greatest strength. I mean, we're looking at semi-real-time combat with an iconic IP gauge that's now circular instead of linear. Your characters and enemies move around this dial and timing becomes everything.
Best battle system on PlayStation 2, hands down. Could cancel enemy attacks, pull off aerial combos, proper strategic stuff. Made every encounter feel like you were conducting an orchestra of violence.
The new aerial combo system lets you juggle enemies in the air for extra damage and better loot. When you cancel an enemy's attack, they will go flying, and if another party member can connect whilst they're airborne, boom, aerial finish.
Aerial finishers, eh? Oh, a bit like when I finish my tea and the cup goes flying because I've dozed off. It happens more often than I'd like to admit.
So, you're controlling this lad Yuki, right, and his mates as they wander around a 3D world scrapping with anything that moves. It's standard stuff really, bit like navigating Dog and Duck of a Friday night, except more magical creatures and fewer men with whippets. Instead of trudging across a world map like some sort of medieval postman, you get to fly a plane between your destinations. Sounds dead fancy, doesn't it? That's until you realise you can only land where the game tells you. It's like having a car, but only being allowed to drive to Tesco's and back. Now, the fighting. This is where it gets interesting, if you're into that sort of thing. You got this circular dial that everyone moves around, characters and baddies alike. Think of it as a very slow merry-go-round where people take turns in hitting each other. When your icon reaches a command bit, the game stops and asks you what you want to do. Attack, cast a spell, or just stand there looking confused. Then your character shuffles into red zone, which is basically the get ready to do something area. Now, spells and fancy moves take longer than basic attacks, because apparently magic requires more concentration than simply whacking someone with a stick. The clever bit is timing your attack to cancel out what enemy is planning. Hit them with critical strike whilst they're preparing their move and you knock them right back to start at dial. It's like interrupting Keith mid-badger fact. Highly effective but requires good timing. Now best part is if you manage to juggle an enemy in air and finish them off whilst they're still floating about, they might drop some better loot, because nothing says quality reward like beating someone up while they can't fight back. It's a bit unsporting, but it's effective. Instead of a traditional world map, you pilot Yuki's airplane between destinations. Sounds brilliant in theory, but in practice it's more restrictive than a Sunday roast timer.
Flying about in circles, landing only where game tells you, a bit like my trips to the pub really. Same route every time, never any surprises.
光のカードよ、我が呼びかけに答え、非業はどう？
The story follows 16-year-old Yuki, who dreams of becoming a legendary pilot like his idol Sky Captain Schmidt. He meets Alfina, a communicator who can speak to the world's guardian spirits, and naturally the fate of the world hangs in the balance.
A standard JRPG fare really. Boy meets girl, girl has mystical powers, ancient evil threatens everything. Could have written it on a napkin down pub.
The whole game kicks off in a world where people get around by flying, either on dragons or in magical aircraft. There's this massive ocean called the Brilliant Sea that only one person has ever managed to cross, the legendary Sky Captain Schmidt. Our hero Yuki lives on a small island and dreams of becoming the second person to make that crossing. He's been secretly building planes with his mate Rots. We're talking about their 19th attempt here. The lad's persistent, you've got to give him that. Of course, his mum Miranda finds out and stows away on his latest test flight, which promptly crashes because of the extra weight. While they're going down, Yuki spots a girl being chased by some thugs and immediately falls head over heels. After the inevitable crash landing, they rescue her. The girl's called Alfina, and she's got this special ability to talk to mystical creatures called guardians, ancient beings that basically keep the peace in their world. She needs to get to a temple to take over from her missing brother Emilius, who's apparently gone a bit off the rails. What follows is your typical adventure story. They meet a dodgy sailor called Alonzo, who tries to gamble away Alfina's precious brooch, encounter a dragon rider named Ulf, and eventually track down Yuki's hero, Schmidt. But naturally, things get complicated when they discover that Emilius has turned into the main villain and is working with an evil guardian called Zorn to basically destroy everything. The whole thing wraps up with Yuki and Alfina getting married and having a kid who, predictably enough, also wants to be a pilot. Because apparently the apple doesn't fall far from the tree when it comes to aviation obsessions.
これでも食らってろ。
The plot starts strong, but falls apart faster than a chocolate teapot. Characters disappear without explanation, plot threads get abandoned, and what begins as an intriguing adventure about dreams and flight becomes a generic save-the-world slog.
Yeah, rather disappointing. It's like discovering your tea has gone cold. Nothing ruins a good story like poor execution.
Oh, yes, at first half had me interested. Second half had me reaching for a remote. It's a classic case of craft ale start, lager finish.
Before we continue, smash that like button if you're enjoying this trip down memory lane, and if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We've got more retro reviews coming your way from right here at the Orbital Broadcast Bunker. Now, the voice acting, it does split opinions quicker than the debate about milk first in tea preparation. I mean, the English dub features some solid performances from most of the cast, although Alfina's voice actress divides fans like Marmite.
Hey, some folks loved it, others wanted to mute the tellies. I mean, personally, I thought we were alright. I've heard worse commentary at low-level esports matches.
As someone who appreciates good audio quality, that is essential for proper tea brewing instructions, I found it perfectly adequate, although nothing beats the sound of a proper whistling kettle.
Johnny Young Bosch brings Yuki to life with his energetic performance. You might recognise Bosch's voice from some pretty big anime roles. He's Vash the Stampede in Trigun, Ichigo in Bleach and Lulok in Code Geass. Before getting into voice work, he was actually the second Black Power Ranger.
I'm a frog.
Which is a fun bit of trivia. He was born in Kansas City to a Korean mother and an Irish-German-American father. Bosch grew up doing martial arts and even won competitions before transitioning into acting. Stephanie Shea voices Alfina with the right mix of softness and determination. She's another veteran of the anime world, known for playing Hinata in Naruto, Orihime in Bleach, and Sailor Moon herself in the newer English dub. Born to Michigan and Chinese parents, she spent much of her childhood in Taiwan before moving to North Carolina and getting into acting during her school years. Michelle Ruff handles Miranda's spirited personality perfectly. Early in her career, she actually used her mother's name, Georgetta Rose, as a stage name, which is rather sweet. You've probably heard her as Rukia in Bleach or as Jill Valentine in the Resident Evil games. She's a Detroit native who studied at Michigan State before getting into voice work through a radio audition. Fleet Cooper takes on the challenging role of Emilius, the conflicted antagonist. Unfortunately, there's not much public information about Cooper's background, but he delivers a solid performance as Alfina's troubled brother. Jean Benoit, or just JB Blanc, brings his theatrical training to the role of Cornell. This French actor studied at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts and has quite the resume. He's the cartel doctor in Breaking Bad, he voices Caustic in Apex Legends, and plays Vander in Netflix Arcane. His classical background really shows how he handles the character. Doug Ray rounds out the main cast as the final boss Zorn. This Californian-based actor has experience voicing villains. He played Dracula in a couple of the Castlevania games before Patrick Z's took over the role. The English voice work holds up well overall, with most of the cast delivering performances that match their characters' personalities without going over the top. Noriyuki Iwata's soundtrack maintains the series' musical prestige. The opening theme, In the Sky by Miz, captures the sense of adventure, even if some tracks do lean heavily into J-pop territory.
I mean, music's decent enough, not as memorable as earlier games, mind, but you know, it does the job like a pint of medium beer. Nothing special, but goes down smooth, as Mr. B well knows.
Well, I found it rather pleasant background music for afternoon tea, though I do prefer something a bit more classical when it comes to feeding the local badgers.
I wanna find it while I've been searching. The boy reaches out to the sky. He prays to get it. No doubt he'll make it. All of his goals and desires
Critics and fans had mixed reactions to Grandia 3. Most praised the refined battle system whilst criticising the weak story and short length. Metacritic scored it 76%. It's respectable, but it's not spectacular.
Oh, it felt like a talented striker missing an open goal. All the tools for success, but couldn't quite deliver when it mattered.
The game never reached European shores initially, making it something of a holy grail for collectors. It finally appeared on the PlayStation Network in 2016, giving European fans their first legitimate chance to play.
Rather like waiting decades for the perfect brew. By the time you get it, you've built up such expectations that reality can only really disappoint.
Harsh but fair assessment there, Keith. Lad, sometimes the anticipation's better than the actual experience.
Well now, when this little adventure first appeared in Japan, it sold rather well, 122,000 copies in its first week, which put it at number 2 in the charts, rather like my position in the tea-making hierarchy at the BBC canteen. At the end of 2005, they had shifted 233,000 copies altogether, and Weekly Famitsu magazine gave it 35 out of 40 points, which earned it something called a platinum distinction. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but it sounds impressive, rather like when someone describes my tea as platinum grade, although I've never quite understood that one either. Now, when it crossed the pond to America, the critics were, well, how should I put this delicately, divided. Game Ranks gave it 78%, Metacritic scored it 77 out of 100, Electronic Gaming Monthly loved the battle system, called it superb with just the right balance of strategy and visual flair. Mind you, they thought the story was rather straightforward. Now, GameSpot found it a bit short. A bit like a tea break that ends too quickly. The New York Times critic called the combat system arguably the greatest of its type, which is high praise indeed. It's rather like declaring Earl Grey as the finest afternoon tea. It's a bold statement, but it's likely to ruffle some feathers. Now, speaking of creatures that know about underground living, did you know that badgers construct remarkably sophisticated tunnel systems? Some badger sets have been occupied continuously for over a century, passed down through the generations, like family heirlooms. The European critics at Eurogamer were less enthusiastic. They called it largely mediocre, but admitted that the battle system saved it from complete disappointment. They absolutely despised the opening song though. Oh god, yes, they called it disgustingly poor oral pap, which is rather harsh, I thought. After all, not every piece of music can be perfectly composed as the whistle of a properly boiling kettle. Grandia 3 clocks in at a rough 25-35 hours for the main quest, notably shorter than its predecessors with virtually no side quests. You're looking at a fairly linear experience throughout.
Well, it felt rushed, didn't it? Like they had a deadline to meet and just shipped out whatever they had. No time for exploration or optional quests.
25 hours? God, it's barely enough time for a proper badger watching session. I once spent 40 hours just observing their seasonal set maintenance routines. Try saying that 5 times fast.
The lack of side quests really did hurt replayability. Once you've seen the story through, there's little reason to return unless you're a completionist chasing every skill and weapon. So there you have it, Grandia 3, a game that promised the sky but struggled to take off. The battle system remains exceptional, the visuals were gorgeous for 2005, but the story and the quests feel half-baked.
Oh, it's worth playing if you can find it cheap, especially for that combat system. Just don't expect the narrative heights of earlier entries.
Rather like a decent cup of tea, but with slightly off milk. It's not terrible, but it could have been better with proper preparation.
It is the final Fantasy VIII of the Grandia series, a flawed gem that divides opinions but still offers moments of brilliance. And that, I think, wraps up our look at Grandia 3's 20-year-old legacy. If you've enjoyed this nostalgic deep dive, slam that like button harder than Yuki crashes his experimental aircraft.
And of course, subscribe for more retro reviews from the Orbital Broadcast Bunker. We'll be here next month, same time, same questionable underground location.
Don't forget to share this video with your fellow enthusiasts. Remember, like a good brew or a well-maintained badger set, the best games improve with proper appreciation.
Until next time, I'll leave you with this. When a company ships styrofoam, what do they pack it in? This has been 20th Anniversary Retrospective Reviews here on Kohigh Mathy's YouTube channel, broadcasting from Britain's most improbable studio location. Cheers.
Right, and who's buying next round?
Yeah, right, I'll put the kettle on.